Welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 398 of the podcast. And on this episode, I'm talking about Trae Young being traded to the Washington Wizards. In 2021, point guard Trae Young led the Atlanta Hawks all the way to the conference finals, which included an incredible 5-game series against the New York Knicks, where he averaged 29 points per game and 9.8 assists. There was not a player in the league I was higher on coming out of that postseason. I thought Trae Young was going to ball out in the coming years and become one of the absolute best players in the NBA. And as you are all aware, that has not been the case. In the years since, he and the Hawks have been disappointments. And there have just been endless amounts of speculation about when Trae Young will be traded, and now it has finally happened. The point guard has been traded to the Washington Wizards. And here's what I think the main issue with Trae Young is. He is a star player, a guy who can score 40 points on a given night and make an all-star game, but he's not a superstar player, a guy who can be in the MVP conversation, a guy who, if he's your best player, you're guaranteed to win 50 games. Over the last few years, I have come to believe the best situation for Trae Young would to be the Robin to somebody else's Batman. If Trae Young is the best player on your team, I don't think you have a great situation. The other main problem I've had with Trae Young is his free-point shooting. He was heralded as the next Steph Curry, and yes, he can hit the occasional deep free shot, but Young is a career 35% free-point shooter, and this year he's shooting a career low 30% from behind the line. What are you supposed to do with Trae Young if he's not hitting the free-point shot? What exactly is he in the league to you? What is his value? What are other teams supposed to be afraid of if he's not consistently hitting free-point shots? Steph Curry is Steph Curry because in the back of everyone's mind at any point in a basketball game, he can hit the dagger free-point shot. In a lot of cases, that's what he's going to end up doing. If Trae Young can't do that, I am asking you, what exactly should his role be on a basketball team? And maybe you could say I'm being overly critical of a guy who averaged 24 points per game and close to 12 assists last year, but that's the tricky thing about the NBA. You can't always go by the stats. You have to go by the eye test, and from what I've seen of him the last few years, I have not been as impressed with Trae Young as I have been in the past. I don't think he has developed into the player I thought he was going to be. For a while, he was the guy that the Hawks traded Luka Doncic away for. I mean, that was what Trae Young was thought of, the guy who the Hawks wanted instead of Luka, and then that was a massive mistake. But in that year, in 21, I thought he was proving the doubters wrong, that he could be a guy who could lead a team all the way to the conference finals. There are very good basketball players who have never led a team to the conference finals, and that's a great thing that Trae Young did, but I thought after that his career would go to the next level, that he would take the next step to be one of the best point guards in all of basketball, to be a top 10 player. I mean, right now, if he's healthy, I would put him in that top 25 to 30 range, and if you told me Trae Young is not in your top 30, I wouldn't be mad at you, because he has been kind of irrelevant the last few years as a member of the Hawks. And maybe this is a case of a team doing a player dirty. Maybe the Hawks have been holding him back, but I don't think I'm the only one down on Trae Young. His trade value was clearly at an all-time low. I mean, part of this trade is that the Hawks are getting back an aging CJ McCollum. I mean, if this was the Trae Young from 2021, there would be multiple first-round draft picks involved. The league clearly does not think that highly of Trae Young at this moment. And you can tell me all you want that this is really about the Atlanta Hawks not wanting to give Trae Young a max contract. But what I have to say about that is, why should they want to give Trae Young a max contract? He has not lived up to the hype the last few seasons. He is not the guy you want to be the face of your franchise based on his play. Giving a guy a max contract who deep down you don't really think is worth it is a risky proposition for an NBA team. Right now was the absolute best time for the Hawks to move on from Trae Young. Both sides need a fresh start, especially Trae Young. I guess what I'm left wondering is, will this trade motivate Trae Young? Or does he think that the Wizards are going to give him a max contract extension no matter what? I'm hoping for the former. I hope that Trae Young elevates his play and takes his game to the next level. My fear is that we've already seen the best basketball that Trae Young is capable of. But I also think there has to be a part of him that's listening to podcasts like this and critics like this who are being overly harsh about his style of basketball. I'm rooting for Trae Young. I want to see that guy who decimated the New York Knicks back in 21. That's the guy who I think was capable of being a superstar. Because let's face it, this trade really isn't even being treated like that big of a deal because what has transpired for Trae Young, he's not that same player, and he's not the player that many people predicted he would become. He's not the new Steph Curry. He's not that guy. And I wouldn't be mad at you if you think he's never going to become that guy because time is running out. Yes, he's still only 27 years old. But I would be very surprised if the Wizards are in a good position in a few years with Trae Young as their best player. I just no longer think of him as that kind of guy. He can't be a Jason Tatum type. He can't be a guy who's the face of an organization. Just ask the Atlanta Hawks. This trade is how they feel about Trae Young. I don't necessarily even think that this trade is that good for Trae Young because the Wizards are going to ask him to be the best player on his team. The best case scenario was for him to be traded to the San Antonio Spurs. They got De'Aaron Fox, a guy who was acting like the best player on the Kings, but makes more sense as a number 2 to Victor Wembanyama. That's what should happen to Trae Young. He needs to play with another alpha. He does not need to be the face of an organization anymore. He's been the face of the Atlanta Hawks for his entire career, and there have been ups and there have been downs, but it has not been consistent enough. And this isn't me telling you that Trae Young is a bad basketball player. This is me saying he is not the player I thought he would become. I thought after 21, we would be talking about a guy who's competing for MVP awards, a guy who could possibly lead the Hawks to an NBA Finals appearance, a guy who elevates his play in the biggest moments. What I don't want for Trae Young is for him to become a guy who's just putting up stats on a bad basketball team, and that's what's been happening in Atlanta, and my greatest fear is that that will continue in Washington. I want to see this guy in the postseason. I do think he rises up when the moments are big. So far, I have looked at this trade from the negative. Now let's look at it from a positive perspective. Maybe the Washington Wizards are thinking that they are getting Trae Young at a time where his value will never be lower, and they are expecting him to return to form, to be that old Trae Young. And maybe, just maybe, they have a grand plan to pair him with another star player, that they're not thinking that Trae Young is going to be their number one option for the next 5 years. Because let me tell you, if they think that that's going to work out with Trae Young being their best player, they've got another thing coming. It's kind of hard for me to believe that the Wizards are thinking this out because they went all in on a guy like Jordan Poole. That didn't work. So they go, who's the next guy we could get that maybe things will pan out for? And they see Trae Young and they go, all we have to do is trade away CJ McCollum. Let's do that. I don't view it as necessarily a diss to say that Trae Young Young needs to be a part of a functional organization. I think the Hawks have been dysfunctional at times. I don't think they've made the right basketball choices overall the last few years either. This is not all Trae Young's fault. I just don't think he's walking into that much better of a situation. And we can get into this a little. I don't think his career is in trouble. I think he's going to get paid no matter what. I think Trae Young is going to continue to have a viable career in basketball. He's probably going to get that max contract extension from the Wizards themselves. I'm just looking at it from, I want Trae Young to be an important figure in basketball, somebody that fans have to pay attention to, because he's becoming one of those guys who puts up decent numbers, but it doesn't matter because he's on a losing team. So yeah, this is a situation where he does need to improve his play as a player, but also the teams that he's surrounded by need to improve drastically as well. He is not one of those guys that's going to elevate a bad basketball team into a good one. And maybe, just maybe, the idea of a secure future is going to get him to improve his play, because all the nonsense surrounding the trade talks, he's heard it. He knows that the Hawks have been thinking about life without him for a while now. Now he can move on from that situation and only think about playing good basketball for the Washington Wizards. I am being critical of Trae Young because, in my mind, to be considered one of the greats in the game of basketball, winning has to be involved, and Trae Young has not helped his team win enough basketball games in Atlanta. Hopefully he gets a fresh start and my feelings towards him start to become positive again. I am rooting for the player of Trae Young. I think he's very entertaining to watch, and I always think it's more interesting to watch athletes who have something to prove, and Trae Young should definitely have something to prove. I mean, everybody is talking about how this is nothing of a trade that came out of nowhere, that this is ultimately the fall of Trae Young. No, this should be a turning point. This is where Trae Young starts to play his best basketball ever. He should be motivated to prove he's a top 5 point guard in the NBA. I'm sure I'm not unlike a lot of fans of basketball that when you first start to see a player, you start to think about their potential legacy when it's all said and done. And I thought when Trae Young's career ended that he would be thought of as one of the greats, that he would be a potential Hall of Fame basketball player. That is in serious doubts right now. If he continues down this path of just putting up numbers, then he's not going to be inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame. He'll just be another point guard who had a decent run. And I'm not actually upset or mad at Trae Young. I mean, things happen in the league. This is what happens. Guys have great runs, and then they don't maintain that consistency. I mean, Chris Paul is a rarity. He is a Hall of Fame point guard. He has been great for his entire basketball career. He has a legacy. That's why so many people were upset when the Clippers dropped Chris Paul. But at this point, from what I've seen, there have been very few defenders of Trae Young because he has not played great the last few years. And even more than that, he's not improving as a basketball player. The players that absolutely drive me mad are the ones who just get to a place and stay there. I mean, the guys who really excite me are the ones who you see the improvement with their games. They become better passers. They become better defenders. They become better closers. Trae Young has not evolved enough as a player over the last few seasons, and hopefully this trade motivates him to do so. His game needs to change. His actual style of play needs to change. It just can't be about the stats, because you have the ball all of the time. You're going to get to average your 25 points and your 12 assists. Right now for Trae Young needs to be about winning basketball games at all costs. Prove that you can be a guy, the best player on a team who wins a lot of games, and then I'll be impressed. It can no longer be about the stats. Because in 1992, it would have been impressive to see a point guard like this put up these kinds of numbers. But in 2026, a lot of guys can do that. It's about winning games. It's about being the best player. It's about going to the conference finals and then making a run to the finals. I've got to say, if he landed in a spot that already had a superstar, I would be so high on this trade. Like if he was playing with somebody who was already great, I think Trae Young can take those next steps. Again, I just think that the Wizards are going to ask Trae Young to be Trae Young. And sadly, I don't think it's going to be enough because it wasn't for the Hawks and it's not going to be for the Wizards. He needs to be the Robin to someone else's Batman. Like if he ended up getting traded to the Bucks and was paired with Giannis, I think that would save Giannis's tenure with the Bucks. But that didn't happen. I mean, could you imagine Trae Young getting to play second fiddle to Giannis? That would have been exciting. That's something that I want to see Trae Young be a part of. Play with another superstar player. Because as of this moment, I don't think you're a superstar. And neither does the rest of the NBA. This is a guy in Trae Young who needs to repair his reputation for basketball fans to believe in again. And I do think it needs to start with the free-point shooting. Like you can't be taking that many free-point shots if you're only going to hit 30% of them. If you want to be known as the free-point shooter, you need to hit 38% if you're going to be that guy. If I'm going to compare you to Steph Curry, maybe you don't have to hit the 44% that Steph has had throughout his career, but you gotta have better than 35% because I think we all think that what was special about Steph Curry was his unlimited range. And yes, there's truth to that, but it's also the consistency at which he hits those long-range three-point shots. Trae Young clearly has range. He just doesn't hit enough of them to justify the amount of threes that he's taking in a game. Even going back just 2 years ago, it would have been a way bigger deal for Trae Young to be traded in the middle of a season. Now it comes out with basically nothing. It's like if you didn't see Trae Young get traded, did he actually get traded? It does feel like more of these kinds of moves in the NBA could be on the horizon. Guards who had unlimited potential that aren't living up to that. I mean, Ja Morant is now rumored to be on the trading block in Memphis. Then you have LaMelo Ball with Charlotte possibly on the move. This all comes down to, for all three of these players, Trae Young, Ja Morant, and LaMelo Ball, being an all-star is one thing. Putting up stats is one thing. Being a superstar player is a whole other thing. It's another realm. You are being compared to the best of the best. We go, have you won a lot of games? If not, you're not one of the best players in the league. If your team is 500 or below, you're not going to be viewed as an elite player any longer. You're going to be on the trading block because they're going to go, we could be a 500 team without you. Why would we give you that super max contract extension? The entire world was shocked when the Mavericks moved on from Luka Doncic because he proved he was a superstar who could lead a team all the way to the NBA Finals. Nobody was surprised that the Hawks moved on from Trae Young. In fact, people were surprised they didn't do it earlier when his value would have been way higher. I've ranted about him a lot on this podcast. I just hope in a few years I feel very differently towards Trae Young. I hope I view him as one of the better point guards in the league. But right now, I'm kind of down on him, and he needs to prove to me that he is the old Trae Young. There's plenty of time to win me back. He's still only 27 years old. Maybe this move is going to end up great for the Wizards and for Trae Young. I'm just in wait-and-see mode before I make any final judgment about Trae Young and his basketball career. I've been super high on this player. Again, in 21, after that postseason, there was no player I was higher on. I was like, this guy just took down the New York Knicks. He put on a show at Madison Square Garden. He is a superstar. And since then, he has not played like one. What I'm really hoping for is that the best of Trae Young is still yet to come. But then there's the cynic in me that believes that that's naive, that we've already seen the best of Trae Young, that this This is who he is, a guy who can hit the occasional three that should be the Robin to somebody else's Batman, that should not be the best player on any NBA franchise. You should not build your team around Trae Young. Right now, that's how I feel about him. He needs to change my mind. I'm only holding him to such a high standard because I see the potential in him as a player. He just needs to be more consistent. Making it to the conference finals with the Hawks was an achievement. I just want to see more from Trae Young. That's all. It's as simple as that. Thanks for listening to this edition of Head to Head. I'm Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so please rate, review, and subscribe.